in the West Coast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're so excited to be here with you today. We're excited because we really care about every single one of you. We're excited because we want to share with you some of the tools that our friend and future Dr. Germán Cadenas is going to be sharing with us, but also because we love spending time with our scholars. My name is Gabby Pacheco, and I am one of the program directors of the TheDream.Us scholarship. With us, we have Melissa Barrera. Hi, Melissa. And you know Melissa. Melissa is your go-to person. You've been getting emails from her. You got the email, and she's going to be moderating tonight's discussion. It's going to be helping us out with this presentation. And then, of course, really, really excited to have Germán with us. Some of you might have already seen Germán, those scholars that we've had for a longer period of time. Germán presented a couple of years ago on the Dreamer experience. And tonight is a special night because, as we know, November 8th, the elections results came out that Donald Trump won, and that he's going to be our president-elect. And as hard that is for a lot of us to hear, that it's a reality that has brought a lot of anxiety and stress and angst to not just ourselves, but our parents and our community overall. And so, you know, I just wanted to, before we started, tell you a little bit about my experience with that, and tell you how in 2003, back in the day, some of you were probably in middle school during that time. I had graduated from high school, and I was really anxious because I wanted to go to college. And as an undocumented person, there was not a lot of resources for me. And I was able to go to school. I was able to find some private dollars and scholarships, and I started organizing. And in 2006, immigration came to my home, detained my parents and sisters, and it was one of the scariest moments of my life. But I do want to tell you that despite all the bad things that have happened, and despite that raid, 10 years later, I'm still here, standing strong, and I'm more determined than ever to fight for you, fight for the community, and to stand up to whatever it is that is coming towards us. So I wanted you to hear from us, from the TheDream.Us, the commitment that we have towards you to maintain supporting you, not just with our scholarship dollars, but also morally supporting you and telling you that we have your back. And with my family, it's been 10 years, and they're still here. And they're here because I had a very strong community, and you are part of that community now, and all of you are part of that strong community. So I do want to tell you that there is anxiety in me. There is uncertainty, but I do want to stay and hear this presentation, and we'll be sending this presentation afterwards to every single one of you. So if you want to hear it again, you can, but also for you to share it. Share with other scholars that couldn't participate and be here. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my good friend, Germán Cadenas, who shortly is going to be Dr. Cadenas. I'm really excited about that. He'll tell you a little bit about his own story of being a dreamer himself, being in Arizona, and now about to finish and accomplish his dream of being a doctor. So, Germán, thank you so much for being with us, and take it on.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you so much, and thank you to the TheDream.Us for having me, for inviting me. I feel really honored to be here, and really happy to be able to spend this time talking to the Dream scholars. You know, as Gabby said before, I was a dreamer myself. I was undocumented for a long time, for about 10 years, and so I wanted to share a little bit of my story before we get started with the workshop. And so I came to the United States from Venezuela when I was 15, and my family and I actually immigrated during a national strike in Venezuela against the government because the government was authoritarian. and we thought that we were going to lose our freedom and we were going to lose our safety, and that the country was going to become a dictatorship like Cuba. And so we came to the United States because this was the land of opportunity and the land of the free. And we thought that we will have a better life here, and there was no way to normalize our status. So we were undocumented, and I was 15. I was in high school, and I thought, well, this is going to be an opportunity for me to you know fulfill my dreams uh, and for me to be able to reinvent myself and help my family. And I dedicated myself to school, to learning English, to getting involved in sports and community service. And after all that work, I was working at a fast food restaurant. After all that work, I was denied admissions to the state university, to Arizona State University, because of my undocumented status. And that was the first time that I really, really felt discriminated against, and that I really felt that my immigration status could be a barrier. And so I actually became really depressed. I was really defeated, and I thought, well, what's the point? I'm going to go back to my country of birth, and I'm just going to fight there. And it was somebody who was a friend of the family who said, no, you're not going anywhere. We need you here. It is important that you're here. And he drove me to a community college and got me enrolled. And so I was going to the community college for a while, and I applied a second time to the university, and they denied me admissions again because of my status. The admissions person said something like I needed to have like $50,000 or something for them to process a visa. Really uneducated about the immigration process and how it works, and basically, denied me admissions. And so the second time around, I wasn't depressed. This time it was fuel that gave me more energy to keep going, because I thought, well, this is personal. I'm going to show them that I can do this, and I'm going to show them what I'm made of. And so I kept going. I continued going to school at the community college and working full time, and I graduated with 2 associate's degrees. And I applied to ASU a third time. La tercera es la vencida. Third time was a charm, as they say. And this time I got in. And I remember it was one of the happiest days of my life, getting the acceptance letter. And celebrating with my family and thinking, this is going to be possible. And I still remember that day. What changed wasn't that the university suddenly became more open. It was that the voters of the citizens of Arizona had passed a resolution called Proposition 300. And Proposition 300 basically limited public services to undocumented immigrants. So it limited health services, it limited educational services. And so what that meant is that we could get admitted to a university, but we would have to pay out-of-state tuition. And so I got in, but I had to pay out-of-state tuition because I couldn't get any support from the government. And so I spent all of my savings trying to pay for school. I lost my job because of E-Verify. And this is around 2007, 2008, when things were getting harder and immigration reform didn't pass. And I was very lucky that I found a private scholarship like TheDream.Us. It was called the American Dream Fund. And through that scholarship, I was able to finish my education and graduate. I graduated with 2 bachelor's degrees, one in psychology and one in business, from Arizona State University. And I graduated magna cum laude, and President Obama was actually the spokesperson at the graduation. It was a really meaningful day. But I think what's even more important than the fact that I graduated, in terms of my own personal growth, is that during that year before graduation, and because of the scholarship, I was able to find other dreamers like me who were in the same situation. I used to think that I was the only undocumented person in Arizona, and that is not the case. And so I actually found a group of students who were like me. They wanted to move forward, and they were really afraid. And we were afraid because at the time, the sheriff Arpaio was doing raids in Latino neighborhoods, and setting up camp and detaining people or going to restaurants, and rounding up people and putting them in his jail in Tent City, which is the equivalent of a concentration camp, um, as the Nazis had them, but for Latinos and for undocumented people who are deemed as criminals, right? And so people were afraid, and we met through this scholarship, and a lot of us wanted to come out of the shadows, and a lot of us wanted to stay in the shadows because of the fear, and we decided that together we were gonna advocate for ourselves, and we were gonna fight for our families, and we were gonna fight for our community. And so we came out of the shadows, and we started moving, pushing for the Dream Act, um, and we became what is now the Arizona Dream Act Coalition. And we basically sparked the Dream movement in Arizona. And and since then I've been involved in the movement in various ways, and I tell you all of this because in many ways I think that I can relate to some of what you're going through, some of what your experience may be like, and in many ways my experience is very different now that I'm documented. But I wanted to share my story because um, many of us have lived through some of what Trump is promising to do in Arizona. We've lived through laws that specifically target and discriminate against us. We lived through SB 1070, which actually gave the police the authority to ask for documentation and put people in prison. And we have fought against it, and we have fought as a community, and we have fought with our allies who have been with us, and we have made progress. SB 1070 has been basically disintegrated. We were able to get in-state tuition for DACA students in Arizona last year, which was a huge victory and opened the doors to hundreds of people. And here we are, and we continue, and we're resilient, and our community continues to move forward. And so with that, I want to, let's go ahead and transition into the mental health piece of the workshop. I want to hear from all of you. I know that this is a very difficult, really stressful time. Right now I'm here at UC Berkeley. I'm doing a doctoral internship, finishing a PhD in counseling psychology. And I work closely with the undocumented student program here at UC Berkeley. And Diana, who's a psychologist for the program, and I put together a toolkit, a coping toolkit for undocumented students to cope with racism and cope with xenophobia and cope with the anxiety that comes with being undocumented and being in college. And so let's go through that. But before we do, I want to open it up to all of you. And I think there's a tool that allows us to raise our hand. And so what I want to ask you is to share with us, if you want to, your experience right now as you learn that Trump will become the president. I want to hear what you're feeling, what you're experiencing right now.
And Herman, just to jump in real quickly, so everyone, on your dashboard or your control panel, you'll have the Q&A or the chat box. There you can ask any questions or comment anything. And for sharing your story, for example, right now Herman is asking you if you want to share your story, you can raise your hand. So just to know the difference of the two. For comments and questions, written questions, please use the chat box. And then if Herman gives you the space to raise your hand and speak up, then we'll go ahead and do it that way. But just so you know. Sorry, Herman, continue.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, so let's hear from you right now. If you would like to share how you're feeling right now and what you're experiencing right now. And I know that many of us are feeling anxious, feeling sad, feeling worried, feeling nervous. I myself am feeling a lot of those things. Um, please raise your hand if you want to share that with the group. I think we have about 30 people on the call.
So we have Karen Caudillo.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Karen.
Okay, I can start talking?
Yes.
Okay, I live in Miami, Florida. Well, no, I attend Miami-Dade College, but I live in Naples, Florida. I already deal with anxiety on a day-to-day basis, and I'm not scared of Trump. I feel like, things happen for a reason, and we can't slow down our progress or slow down the conversation of our issues with our friend. But it has gotten me a lot more anxious lately. Just thinking about uncertainty, not knowing if DACA will stay, not knowing what's going to happen to my parents. I feel like I'm not in a bad place. Like I kind of I'm comfortable with the idea of just knowing that we're going to be fine, but I think it's very nail biting, especially finishing up here my AA and a little in political science, and just I was really involved in the Bernie campaign, and just actually being really involved in the whole election itself was I think even more of a cause for my anxiety. But I think that it's important that we do stuff like this, and we communicate, and we reassure ourselves that no matter what happens, we're in this together, and that's why the scholarship is here to really help us in all ways. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing. And it sounds like, I hear that there's some anxiety that's been there from before, and even, getting involved in the campaign, being involved in the Bernie campaign was, a bit more of a source of anxiety. And but I also hear some optimism that things will be okay, and that connecting with the community can help us move forward. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any more? Anybody else who would like to share how they're feeling right now, what they're experiencing? And there's no right or wrong. I just kind of want to hear about how you're doing.
So we do have a few comments from a few people, experiencing the same feelings, feeling lost, feeling scared, but again, the sense of optimism too, of let's see what happens. We do have another student who would like to share something. Give me 1 second. Let me find you, Priya. Okay, Priya, you are unmuted.
Hi, Priya.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, hi, my name is Priya and I live in New York City. And I feel like New York has felt it the most. I have seen, like, I'm an immigrant and I'm so thankful that I'm able to have the scholarship, but I kind of feel like I lost because I was out there, like, doing two jobs, going to school, and trying, the fact that I wasn't able to vote, I feel like I'm lost. I'm a woman of color. Um, I'm just like all over the place, sorry. Like, I feel like us women have lost because I know Trump, he's not gonna do anything for us women, especially immigration. And now I'm just like, does it even matter if I continue going to school? Because sometimes sitting in the train, you hear such nasty, hateful things, and at times I wish I can speak up, but then again, I remember I'm an immigrant too. Like, who am I to say something? Because at the end, I don't want nobody bashing me or throwing something at me. You know what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like I feel like we're just gonna be in a scary world for like a few years, and like I
Mm-hmm.
kind of lost my faith to go to school and like everything. I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking to like take as much classes as I can in case my DACA scholarship do get cut off. That way at the end I can somewhat be able to pay off my own pocket. Like I registered for 7 classes in the spring. I know that's crazy, but I'm just trying to take as much as I can just so God forbid the scholarship do get cut off, I'm able to stand up for myself. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just it's just painful. Like I think about it every day. Like this semester has been tough as it is, taking 5 classes, and I'm trying to keep myself together, but then again I feel like I'm falling apart with everything that's going on, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. And I do hear that there's a sense of not only are we losing as immigrants, but we're also losing with other identities that we have, right? Our intersectional identities, right? So people of color are losing, and women are losing, and others, right? The disabled are losing, and the LGBT community is losing, right? Many people who belong to one or multiple of these communities, right, feel threatened, and feel like there's a lot at stake and there's a lot of uncertainty. And I hear that there's a sense of hopelessness. What's the point of continuing with school if if maybe my DACA or my DACA scholarship is removed. So I hear it. I hear it. And in a sense, it's almost like a loss, right? You were talking about that sense of loss. It's almost
Yes.
as if we lost somebody or something, right? There's a sense of grief that we're all going through, and I just want to normalize that many of us are experiencing that right now, right? Like we really lost something. So thank you for sharing that. I don't know if Gabby wants to say something about the scholarship.
So we just want to make sure that Priya and everyone who is on, that that we are committed to you until the end. We have been able to confirm with one of our donors that there is money for you. So even if DACA is taken away, we are committed to you to continue funding the scholarship portion that you would have left money-wise for you. So Priya, if you
Wow,
want
thank
to
you.
take 7 classes, you can, but you don't have to. So it's best for you to have peace of mind, take in the classes that you can take so that you can work if you need to work, if take care of family or whatever. Don't overload because you think that we're going to take the scholarship away. That is not going to happen.
Thank you so much. I feel somewhat better.
All right. Thank you, Gabby, for clarifying. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the toolkit. Okay, and as Priya was saying, we may hear comments in our commute, right? And on the train, on the bus, even on campus, of people saying things that are hurtful to us, right? And in many cases, those things are really overt. They're really clear, like the things that were said during the campaign, right? Or even the things that the neo-Nazis and the alt-right group are saying now. Those are really clear, right? Signs of racism. And in some other cases, they may be a little bit more subtle. Okay, they may take the form of what people uh, refer to as microaggressions, right? Like people saying a comment or making a certain body gesture or looking at you in a certain way that basically communicates that you shouldn't be here or that you're not as good as. And I really want to normalize that, because those experiences are real. And sometimes we may think that we're making things up in our head and that we're going crazy, but those things are real, right? And many times they're unintentional, and many times they come from people who are well intended, but they're real and they're still hurtful. And so we have a toolkit to help us cope with those kinds of things, with the racism and with the environment that is very tense right now. So I'm going to go ahead and go through each of the steps that we have here in the toolkit, and I'm going to stop along the way. I know we have about half an hour left, so I'm going to start moving kind of fast, and I'm going to stop along the way to take questions. So if you have any questions during the presentation at any time, simply type them, and Melissa's going to gather them, and I'm going to stop along the way to take and address a few questions. All right, so the scoping toolkit, by the way, is not something that we came up with here at Berkeley. This is a compilation of a lot of resources that are out there. Okay, there's a lot of literature on coping skills, coping tools, and this is just a compilation of them. Okay, and so we have about 8 that we put together with you. The first one is about acknowledging reactions, sort of about becoming aware of how you personally are reacting to the rhetoric and the environment and the uncertainty. And I do want to emphasize that there's no right way of reacting. There's no right or wrong way, and that you can give yourself permission to simply name what is there. Okay, to give it a name. And I know that sometimes it feels really uncomfortable to have feelings and emotions and thoughts that that we think shouldn't be there and that don't feel right. But what I want to encourage you to do is to try to find a name for those things. Okay, is it anger that you're feeling? Is it disgust? Is it fear? Is it anger? Okay. And a lot of times what we tend to do is we tend to go to anger, right? Anger is kind of like the go-to emotion, okay, when we're feeling uncomfortable. And I just want to encourage you to explore that a little bit further, and to try to name what's really happening for you. Because if you can name it, then you can address it later, and you can do something about it, okay? And I also want to encourage you to notice when you're minimizing or discounting, when you're kind of putting your experiences down or putting them to the side or suppressing them, kind of pushing them back. And I think that's something that we as immigrants tend to do quite a bit in order to survive. You know, we just kind of push things to the side and we push them down because we have so much work to do, right, in order to survive. But I really want to encourage you to become aware of that if you're doing that, because over time that can build up and may not be so positive. Okay, moving on to the second one, we have cognitive reframes. So cognitive reframes are about reframing, about sort of reshaping some of our thoughts, about reinterpreting negative thoughts that we're having about ourselves. Okay. And so what happens is that, you know, we're hearing all these negative things about immigrants, we're hearing all these negative things about people of color, women, Muslims, all these different communities. And not only do we hear them now, you know, in the media, but as we have been growing up, we have been hearing them from friends, from teachers, from even family members. And so what happens is that we internalize these negative messages, and they become beliefs that we have about ourselves that may be negative, and we can hear them in negative self-talk, right? Kind of when we become really critical about ourselves, and we put ourselves down in that way, or we expect too much of ourselves, or we think that we're not good enough. And so what I want you to do is I want you to first of all identify those negative feelings, and second of all, perform a reality check, okay? Understanding that your feelings can distort the reality of the situation, Okay, and then after you're aware of the feelings and the negative self-talk, I want you to come up with a counter message, a positive message to that negative self-talk that you may be hearing in yourself, okay, in your head. Okay, something positive, something like a strength, or a value, or something that that is positive, that is grounded in reality, that you believe about yourself. Okay, maybe highlighting a strength that you have, or highlighting an achievement that you've accomplished. Highlighting something positive about yourself whenever you're feeling down and you're feeling like you're being too critical, too negative to yourself. Okay, and that can help you that can help us make a positive reinterpretation. Okay, I'm gonna move to the third one, and we'll make this available to you, and feel free to take notes also as we're going through this. So the third one is about discussing, and why? We think that discussing, whether it's with a friend or a couple of friends, or discussing with a teacher or a counselor that you feel safe with, that you feel that you can talk with about what you're experiencing, or maybe a family member or somebody on campus. I think it helps minimize the tendency to internalize negative experiences, to start believing the negative things that people are saying about us. Okay, basically discussing it, being able to talk about it. And again, I would encourage you to think of people that you feel safe with, okay, on campus and off campus, and people who you can go to whenever you need to talk. Okay, and if it's hard to think of someone right now, I would really encourage you to maybe go to see a mental health counselor on campus, and begin to talk about it, and work with them to build a support network, and find people who are safe to you, who you can go to when you need to. Okay, we're gonna move on to number 4. And so number 4 is about empowerment through resistance. This is more of the social action way of coping with it. And I do want to acknowledge that not everybody is an activist, and not everybody, for many reasons, not everybody is as willing or able to kind of be at the forefront of the fight, right? And that is okay. That is okay. There's no shame in being a dreamer who, for whatever reason, is not public about them being a dreamer, okay? Or who's not, in the protests or in the media, and that's completely okay. Everybody has different situations. For many people, there are many, many risks that come with being public, right? Out in their family and so on. And so I just want to normalize that there's a spectrum, and people are in different, in different parts of that spectrum, and it's okay if you don't want to be public. You can participate, obviously, in social change. There are many ways to get involved with your local organizations. But I also want to talk about self-care and caring about yourself as an act of resistance, right? Because if you're not caring for yourself, if you're believing the crap that they're saying about us, and if you're internalizing that and you're letting that get you depressed and get you anxious, and then you're letting that interfere with your academics, then they're winning, right? Then the alt-right is winning. And so they will ultimately win when they convince us to take part in our own oppression. And so the one thing that you can do is to care for yourself, and really see self-care as a way of resisting social oppression and the things that may be coming down with this new presidency. So I also want to highlight combating internalized racism through positive self-talk. Okay, as we've said before, kind of keeping that a list of affirmations, maybe a list of things that you do really well, strengths that you have, skills that you have, things that you're proud of, and keeping that list with you, so that if you're on the train and you hear these people, saying some things that you don't appreciate, you pull out your list and you read it, and that can help you get into a better space. All right, so I'm gonna stop right now, and let's take a couple of questions.
So we have a question regarding how and where they can report racist incidents that they experience or that they see.
Okay. How and where to report racist incidents. Okay. So that's a great question. And it will depend on your campus, if they're happening on campus. I think, the first person that I think of would be your teacher, your professor. If you're experiencing something in a class, make sure you let your professor know. And I would also go, many campuses have, and it all depends on where you are, but they will have offices of diversity and inclusion. Those tend to be good places to report that as well. And then, if it's happening outside, you could always call the police. That's always your right, even as an undocumented person. And I know that depending on, on your situation, that may or may not be possible. I don't know if Gabby has something that she wants to add.
So I know that MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal and Defense Fund, is starting to collect some of these, and there are other organizations. So I'm going to write this down, and we'll do a little bit of research, and if we come up with things, we'll put it up on your Scholar portal. Maybe we can do is attach some resources that will come up throughout this presentation to an email that we'll send out with the recording of this. Melissa, what do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea, Gabby. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm gonna add more to your plate, and I think if there's any way to find out the specific office on each of the partner colleges, that would be great. If there's a way to do that. I know that the ACLU was also collecting stories. So in Arizona, when they were fighting SB 1070 in Arpaio, they were collecting stories of racism and racial profiling. Yeah.
We can probably reach out to the partner colleges, Gabby.
Yes. And I think also if scholars have some information and they want to share with other scholars, if they can send it to us, or we can probably start a discussion on Facebook to see where scholars are going to share this information. And I think it's important to call it out, especially because we want safe spaces on our campuses, and we know that the college presidents are as committed as we are to making sure that our scholars are well. So that would be also a great homework for all those that are participating tonight to see if there are safe spaces on campus or places that they can report this to.
So I don't have any questions. Let me just quickly check. You know what? We actually just got a few questions. So some are asking if it would be risky to call the police and also to protest. So maybe, Herman, you can share a few safety tips on protesting and reaching out to the authorities.
Yeah, definitely. So please keep in mind that this is not legal advice, right? And I wish I could give you legal advice, but in terms of reaching out to the police, it depends on your situation, right? It depends on sort of your own risk and your families. I know that in some mixed status families, it can be a risk to call. It is your right, right there. The police is there to protect you and to serve you as a community member, and you should be able to report and to contact them. I think it depends on where you are. I know that in some communities the relationships with the police are much more tense. Like in Arizona, I would have never called the police when I was in high school because I was so afraid. But it really depends on your comfort level and the risks that may or may not bring to you. And in terms of participating in a protest, again, it's really, it kind of depends on your own individual situation. There are activists who take on huge risks, right? Getting arrested and doing civil disobedience and so on, that may or may not impact their situation right down the line. And so there are many ways to get involved in social action that are safe and that may minimize those risks. And and it's really up to you to kind of choose how much you want to get involved and how much risk you take on.
Great. Does anybody want to speak up or ask a question via audio? If so, please raise your hand. Okay. So I think we don't have any questions, Herman, at this point.
Okay. Okay, so I'll keep going through the presentation. And again, if you have questions, just type them and we'll take them as we go. All right, so we'll go to number 5, tool number 5, mindful isolation and disconnecting from triggers, triggering interactions and other situations that might elicit a fight or flight response. Okay, so if you're not familiar, the fight or flight response is sort of this mechanism that we developed as humans as we evolved in order to keep us safe. Okay, so our brain, whenever it thinks that it is in danger, it will send us a signal to your body to produce more adrenaline, which creates stress for you to be able to either fight a threat, right? If you're hunting, if you are a human, thousands of years ago, and you were hunting and you see a bear, your brain will go into fight or flight and will send you energy to fight the bear, or if the bear is too big, to run away and flight and keep yourself safe, right? And so what happens is that, as we are in these situations where we feel unsafe, our brain is sending that signal to us, right? But we can't really run away and we can't really fight physically, right? And so that can become, anxiety, that can become depression, that can become other things that we feel, other symptoms. And so I would encourage you to pay attention to triggers, to situations, people that make you feel anxious and make you respond, and taking a break from them, okay? Sort of mindful isolation, taking a mental health day for you to just kind of take care of yourself, or doing something that you really enjoy, okay? Like for me, for example, I really like going to the movies. So when I need to disconnect and I need to not, read the news, I would watch a movie, or I would play a funny video on YouTube, or do something that will completely take my mind off, this really tense environment. Okay, and the caveat with that, what I would say is, be mindful of how much you're doing it. Right? If I'm watching a movie, every day, then that may become a problem in and of itself. Right? So too much self-care is too much self-care. But every once in a while, it's a good idea to just isolate for a little bit and take care of yourself. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. Finding supports, recognizing when you need more counseling, when you need a little bit more hope, maybe wanting to connect with someone like a spiritual leader, or reading a book, or listening to a song that inspires you and that gives you that sense of hope, right? Or needing to connect with a mentor, somebody who's kind of like a role model, or finding academic support, realizing when all of these things that we're feeling are getting in the way of our academics, and maybe you need a tutor, or maybe you need to study with some people in your class to get yourself to where you need to be. So finding those supports and understanding, and this is something that I used to think myself a long time ago, and I find a lot of first-generation students tend to think, is that asking for help is a weakness, and that getting support from others means that that you're not strong enough, or that something's wrong with you. And I really want to challenge that, because I actually see seeking support and seeking help as a sign of strength, as a sign that you are smart enough to be able to use the resources that you have to push yourself forward. Okay, let's go to the next one. Self-care and self-preservation. So defining self-care, skills to promote balance, deliberate and self-initiated, and with the goal of minimizing the negative impact of xenophobia and racism. So again, self-care, meaning doing things that you enjoy and doing things that bring you happiness and help you kind of take care of your emotional needs. Whether it's spending time with somebody who you really enjoy spending time with, right? Or reconnecting, with a friend or family, or going for a walk, exercising, disconnecting, whatever it is that brings you joy. You can think of that as self-care. And then thinking about a healthy mind, body, and spirit. Some people really enjoy meditation and more of the indigenous healing practices, prayer, reading, doing things like building an altar. And what I want to comment is that your background and your diversity can actually be a strength, and I think it's a strength. So if you come from a particular belief system, or there are certain traditions in your community, in your culture, or something that some traditions that you feel drawn toward, I would encourage you to embrace that, right? And that could be a strength, and it could be protective. Emotional processing through painting, drawing, spoken word, writing, singing, poetry, right? Finding different outlets to express your emotions and to transform those feelings. Not everybody likes to talk, right? Not everybody finds it helpful to talk, and so finding whatever it is that kind of helps you release and helps you process what is going on with you. Physical activity, exercising. This is something that I find really helpful myself. Dancing, walking, cooking, getting outdoors in nature. And then lastly, finding safe spaces. Finding spaces in your campus or in your community where you know that you're protected and where you know that people have your back. Whether it's that one teacher who kind of gets what it is like to be a first-generation student, or an ally on campus, or a friend, whatever that space is, knowing where it is and knowing how to access it when you need it. Okay, and we're at the last one. This one is about reconnecting with your values. And the reason why we included this one is because when we feel like we are being judged, when we feel like we're being evaluated because of our background and our diversity and our immigration status, we may experience something called stereotype threats. And what stereotype threat means is that you, even unconsciously, are going to try to perform in a way that disconfirms the stereotype, right? So, for example, there's a stereotype that Latinos are not as smart as other groups, right? And so when I'm in a situation, sometimes when I'm in a situation where I'm the only Latino, I may try unconsciously. I may try to behave in a way that disconfirms that stereotype, okay? Because there's a risk that comes with confirming the stereotype, and that you might be evaluated negatively, right? So when you're taking an exam, or when you are giving a presentation in class, or even when you're writing an essay, you might experience some stereotype threat, right? Kind of being afraid that you're gonna be judged because of your ethnicity or your background. And so it takes a lot of energy away from what we're actually doing to sort of be dealing with that stereotype threat. And so there's a quick activity that I would encourage you to do now, or whenever you have some time. When you're about to enter a situation when you're going to be evaluated, again, you know, an exam, or a presentation in class, or working with classmates who are not immigrants like you, who are different, and you think that, you know, they may have some perceptions of you, or going into that job interview, think about a value that is most important to you, okay? Any value. You know, a value can be freedom, it could be independence, it could be family, it could be education, it could be hard work, it could be, you know, a number of things. Any value that is important to you, and write about that value for about 10 minutes, okay? Without judging what you're writing, simply write about it, let it flow in a piece of paper for about 10 minutes, okay? And then go into the situation where you're going to be evaluated. Then go and take that exam, or then go and write that essay. And what happens is that by concentrating in a value that is important to us, a positive value, our brain begins to shift from stereotype threats and begins to focus resources on your strengths and the things that you do well. And it can put you in a better state of mind. All right, so those are all of the tools that we have in the toolkit. So maybe we can take a couple of questions.
So we do have a couple of questions. One of the scholars was asking, she's experienced some panic attacks, and she was asking if you could recommend or elaborate on how to prevent them.
Great question, great question. And who asked this question again?
So, give me 1 second. So Abigail Gomez asked the question.
Okay, Abigail. So with panic attacks, so what I would recommend is, first of all, trying to monitor the trigger, okay? Trying to become aware of the situation where you might feel that it may lead to panic, okay? Whether it's a specific place or space or person or comment, if there's a time of day, trying to monitor that, and trying to become aware of sort of the progression of the panic attack, right? So usually the panic attack won't happen all of a sudden. It would work as a build-up, right? And so trying to identify the thoughts, the emotions, the physiological signs that will let you that there's a panic attack coming, okay? So that you can then intervene to prevent it, okay? You know, whether it is that maybe you're becoming sweaty, okay, or you're shaking, or you're having a certain thought pattern, or you're feeling a certain way. So first of all, you know, identifying the trigger and the build-up of the panic. And then I think the fastest way to deal with it is to break the biopsychosocial cycle, breaking the fight or flight response. And usually the way to do it is through breathing. So by regulating your breathing, you can actually stop yourself or prevent yourself from going into panic, or even get yourself out of panic. So what happens is that when we're doing something that requires a lot of energy, we breathe very shallow, right? And we breathe very fast. Okay, like when we're exercising, we're breathing in a way that is helping our body create more energy. And when we go to sleep, we breathe very slowly, right? We breathe like a baby, right? Slowly and deeply, in a way that helps our body relax and calm down. And so, yeah, my suggestion would be to try to regulate your breathing and try to really breathe slowly and deeply, and take 5 or 10 minutes to do a breathing exercise, and calm some of that energy down. There are many breathing exercises, mindfulness, meditation exercises that you can find on the internet, on YouTube, and there are some apps that you can download on your phone that can guide you through mindfulness exercises, and you can even use them on the bus. You can do them, on your commute at school. 5 or 10 minutes listening to a breathing exercise to help you feel a little bit calmer. And I would really encourage you, Abigail, if it's happening often, and if it's happening, so regularly that it's really, interfering with other things, to talk to a mental health counselor, or or a healer, or someone who can work with you more, individually.
Thank you.
So we're getting great comments, tips, and from other scholars. One of the scholars said you can always try meditating as well. So if you guys start reading the comments from the other scholars, you can also see some of the tips they're sharing. One of the students asked, how can we support others who have panic attacks?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Great question. So there are many ways. So first of all, being there, simply being present, I think is, sometimes it can be enough to simply just show that emotional support by holding space for somebody. Helping them get out of the panic, encouraging them to breathe, holding them, holding their hand, that could be helpful. And then seeking help, if it's something that is out of your depth, if you will. And this goes along with, people who may have thoughts of harming themselves or harming somebody else, okay? Or if you yourself are having those thoughts, or if you know somebody who is, call for help, okay? Call an emergency hotline, or call the counseling center, or call 911. If you feel like you've done as much as you can to help, I wouldn't wait to call. I would call, as soon as possible.
So Herman, we also have some students asking, what if they are experiencing suicide thoughts? If you have any recommendations and any helpful resources.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I have a number that I want to give you. If you give me 1 second. So I would encourage you to find an emergency hotline, whether it's in your campus or the national one. And let me pull up the national one to make sure that you have it. But knowing that there's always a number that you can call, okay, for free, no matter the hour of the day, no matter where you are, that you can always call, and there will be someone on the other end of the line that can talk with you and talk through it. What I would say is, really working on that positive, the positive self-talk, and trying to find hope. Okay, and if that's hard to do by yourself, go and talk to someone who you trust, who can.
Herman, you're breaking off a little bit. Gabby, can you hear him?
Now we can hear Herman now. And we can hear.
There we go. I'm back.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Awesome. I can hear you guys too. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so I think what I was saying is trying to find hope, trying to find a reason to live for. Okay, and if that's hard to find by yourself right now, finding it in somebody who you can trust, and or finding that inspiration from somewhere else. Okay, from a spiritual leader, or a mental health counselor, or a teacher, or a friend, or a reading, or a book, or a movie, but trying to remind yourself that there is a reason why you're here, and that there is hope in the future. Okay, and I would say if you're having those thoughts, don't hold them to yourself. Share them with somebody. Okay, you don't have to carry the burden all by yourself. Tell somebody who you can trust, and if those thoughts are strong, I would encourage you to share them with a mental health counselor on your campus. And they're trained to support you. Okay, that's what I do all day, and it's okay. It's gonna be okay. I am gonna pull up the headline.
And if I may add, I am not a mental health professional, but I think it takes a lot of courage for someone to acknowledge and say, these are the feelings that I'm having, these are the thoughts that I'm having, and say it out loud. So I just wanted to thank you for trusting us and for sharing with us those thoughts, those intimate thoughts. And this is a safe space. This is a place where we're here to support and help you, and we want to make sure that you're okay. So, like Herman said, reach out to somebody. You're not alone, and probably there's a lot of people feeling like you right now. And like Herman said, it's okay. And I just want to say that, I want to honor you for sharing with us that, and thank you for being strong and sharing those thoughts with us.
I have the number right here, and I pulled it on my phone, right? It's on Google. So please write it down. It's 1-800-273-8255. Again, 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Okay. And like Gabby said, I really want to emphasize how normal it is to think that when we're going through something difficult, yeah, many more people than you think have had or are having those thoughts. And so, yeah, you're not alone. Okay. And so, Melissa, maybe we can take one more question.
Sure. So one of the students was asking in regards to, is it safe to say that we have DACA on campus? So any thoughts on that?
Thank you for asking that. I think it depends on where you are, and it depends on, on your own comfort level and your own situation, and it depends on your state, and it depends on, you know, the laws and the policies that are in place. Um, I would say if you're willing and you feel safe, or if are willing to take the courage to share with others your story and your experience, there's nothing more powerful in changing people's attitudes towards immigrants. There's nothing more powerful in getting people to see what we go through than sharing your story and telling people about